Shalom, family. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. We're going to talk about all the chatter that has been going on over on TikTok. And it's been going on for quite some time. I've been following it periodically here and there. And it's the talk of our people, our melanated people being the indigenous and the original people of this land. And the Siberians don't seem to like it. They are looking at it as we are attempting to erase them from being indigenous in the land. And, technically they can't be indigenous in the land because you can't come over here from somewhere else, the Barren Straits, and be indigenous to a whole different land from where you traveled from. So, but they want to maintain the indigenous Native American title. And the thing is, the more it's getting spoken about that our people are the indigenous people of this land, it is starting to spread. It is taking hold, and people are bringing a lot of receipts proving that we were indeed the indigenous people of the land. Now, I have done these stories before. In fact, I did a podcast on it a couple of months ago, and I even had one come in my comment laughing on, yeah, right. The bottom line is, if you look like a mixed race, which y'all look like, of people, you're not original, and you're not in any position to sit your butts around talking about what's original and what's not. We know one damn thing: you're not original. Okay? You're not original. In fact, most of you light and bright people, you're not original anywhere on the planet. You don't have a home on the planet because more than likely, y'all are attached to these Caucasus Mountains, because we know the Arabs are. The Arabs, they had mountains, and the caves are still there to this very day, the ones they used to live in, this Arab race. And so it wasn't just Esau, it was a lot of the other people that also came out of those caves. The Chinese came out of caves, the Arabs came out of caves. Many of these light and bright East India, they came out of caves. So no, so y'all are not original anywhere. You're not. And it's taking traction because, a lot of us have the passed down stories. A lot of us have the actual receipts and documentation predating Columbus. And so it just looks stronger than what the Siberians can give you. And it does. That's why it's catching on. And they don't like it. They don't like it at all. So, y'all, I'm going to show you some of the videos that have been coming out on TikTok, and our people are really bringing it. They really, truly are. Okay. And it's really scaring them because you can see their reaction. It's scaring them. And with the raids that are going on in Minneapolis, they are also grabbing those Native Americans. They're getting placed in those ICE detention centers too. So, yeah, they're scared. Thank you for the ones. Thank you.
Black American freedmen, I want you to get ready because 2026, we're going to learn that we are the real American indigenous people. You're going to learn that because you're already seeing the seeds of it being planted, right? And you're already seeing so many native tribes taking offense to this and trying to push their feathers and their dances in our faces, right? Well, you've been seeing seeds of this being planted all year long. Like, for example, we are seeing so many articles coming out of the European continent about Cheddar Man, about how all ancient ancestry linked to Europe is linked to African ancestry, about how all of them were dark skinned. And there's no person in their right mind who's going to say a white man who looks like Donald Trump started out looking as black as me or blacker and then tell me that's not how all people looked. Right. You're going to learn more and more and more about that. And this is why right now you're seeing these weird pushes about us being together, how we're all the same people. Hey, we're all the same people. And you're noticing a lot of the people, and I don't want to make this about a colorism thing, but a lot of people who happen to be light skinned. Are you not noticing them coming forward saying, hey, we got to squash all the talk about racism, all the talk about stuff because there was slavery everywhere. There was this problem everywhere. You're going to see that being pushed hardcore in 2026 because simultaneously, you're going to see more revelations about who the true American Indigenous are. And the reason why you're going to see that more and more increase is because some of the archaeologists and some of the scientists, they've been finding more and more evidence of this. Prime example, what we've been finding is that tracking human ancestry is not so much linked to climate. It's not so much linked to location. It's linked to the radiation record. Because see, our dark skin is a reaction to ultraviolet UV radiation, not so much heat, because you can have high exposure of sun in very, very cold places. You know, that is biologically possible. So with that being said, what we're finding is that you can trace human ancestry along the equator line. And sometimes the equator line didn't always show where the sunlight was being shown at. And so the reason why you had light skin or white people develop is because you want to prevent things like rickets, a debilitating condition that comes from a lack of vitamin D that you get from ultraviolet UV radiation. So next year and years going beyond that, you're going to hear more and more revelations of this. And the way that I notice beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'm hearing a lot of white people talk about this. Are y'all not seeing this? I was doing some research into the background of the natives, the native tribes here, the red natives, kicking us out of the tribes partially because they wanted to preserve their racism, but also because they wanted to get more casino profits. Basically, the more members that you kick out, the more per capita payments that you get from those casino profits, because a lot of tribes can actually get profits and they can get per capita payments per adult in that tribe. So when I was researching that, I ran into a Hispanic woman. And she's talking about Walter Plecker, about how black people were reclassified, about how the real natives were most likely black people. A lot of black people talking about how we have Native American ancestors and how they weren't slaves and how they were here for a long time and how they were copper colored or darker. My grandmother told me that. And my grandmother, everything that my grandmother told me about our ancestry so far has checked out. Now, I've traced my own ancestry up to Rhode Island, to slavery in Rhode Island, in Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, even New York. But some lines of my family just goes cold. Black people, some of them were marked Native American. Now, I'm having a really hard time deciphering between is this my side of the family that was enslaved by the Choctaw, or were they people that were already here? Because let me appeal to your reasonable senses. My grandmother told me as a child that we descend partially from a white woman who married a black slave in Rhode Island, and the white woman was called a witch. This is why my grandmother was very superstitious, but she never liked to use the word witchcraft. But if anyone who knew my grandmother would tell you that woman was superstitious as hell. And that some of the stuff that she did was borderline witchcraft, but nobody ever called it that. And anybody who knows anything about hoodoo, you know what it means when an older black woman is called mother a lot. You know what it means when she knows how to work with roots. You know what it means when she's somehow an animal whisperer. Just out of nowhere. Hanging all kind of weird reefs and stuff and mojo bags. You know what that means. A lot of our grandmothers and our foremothers, they would practice hoodoo, but they would never say anything because that fits into the concept of the invisible church or practicing hoodoo right out in the open while pretending to be a Christian. Because that's how we did it during slavery, and that's how we survived. That's how we planned rebellions. That's how we planned escapes. That's how we got down. But back to the main point of this, you're going to hear about a lot of this stuff. You're going to hear about people admitting that Columbus saw black people when he went to Hispaniola. You know, the place that we now call the one half Dominican Republic and the other half Haiti. Yeah. You know, that's why I had a spat with the Salem Witch the Salem Witch Trials Museum. I told them, hey, listen, the first victim of the Salem Witch Trials was a black woman named Tituba. You're claiming that she's Native, and the only reason why you're saying that she's Native is because her husband was a red Native named Indian John or John or John Indian or John the Indian. So yeah, oftentimes when you're racially ambiguous, especially as a woman back during that time, when you got married, you assume the racial identity of your husband. That was very common. And how would I know that? I descend from a white woman who married a black slave. So in the freaking Northeast, where the Salem witch trials also happened. So I would somewhat be a bit of an expert given who I'd freaking descend from, you know? So I'm having a spat with him like, hey, she also practiced hoodoo. Cotton Mather, the witch hunter, even said that. And they're doing the whole I'm white and I say so stuff. I guarantee you next year and the years beyond that, they're not going to give the same answer. See, I already know that the University of Oregon and the University of California at Riverside and the Smithsonian, I already know that they're working on this stuff as we speak. A lot of people are starting to confess those Olmec statues, they're African. Because there's just too much about South America and any place that's underneath the United States of America that seems too African. I mean, how dare a Mexican say that I have no African roots? Do you think gumbo is Mexican? Why is all y'all abuelas or grandmas black looking? Like my wife looks nothing like me. But let me tell you something. Her great grandmother is blacker than my grandma. Let me say that for you again. Her great grandmother has an afro. Looks blacker than Black Michael Jackson, baby. She was doing Thriller in damn Spanish. Suavemente with a chicken wing, baby. Black as hell. And my grandma is light skinned. So I'm just, we're going to discover some stuff in the coming years. I just want y'all to be ready for this. A lot of you who doubted us and laughed at us, who said this stuff, it's okay. Because the people that I'm talking to, a lot of you are from my lineage. I'm more forgiving when it comes to that. However, when the information comes out, I need you to get over whatever biases that you have. The truth is coming out. And you're going to find out the reason why a lot of them so-called Native American dances look so similar to the African shamans and how they dance in Africa. You're going to find out. You're going to find out about the ethnogenesis here, about how what happens when you get a people who not only look different from other people from the African diaspora, but different muscular structure, different languages, different culture, different religious beliefs, different music, different cooking. You're going to find out why we're so different. You're going to find out what makes us unique on these lands. And it's about goddamn time, man.
So after this year, I will no longer be referring to my people as Black folk. I will be referring to my people as Indigenous Americans. If y'all have an issue with it, It doesn't matter.
There was a paper genocide that occurred, and there was the officials in Virginia deliberately expunged the records. They destroyed the official records and most of the private records. I mean, I've got a statement that gets into the whole thing, but basically, a lot of Virginia's ruling elite claimed to be blood descendants of Pocahontas, and in their view, that meant that no one else in Virginia could make a claim that they were Native American, a descendant of Pocahontas, because to do so would mean that Virginia's ruling elite would have to be classified as all other non-whites were, which was, in quotes, and this was the law, the inferior Negroid race. This is what it was about. And with enormous hypocrisy, Virginia's ruling elite pushed policies, got them passed, and it culminated with the Racial Integrity Act of 1924.
All right, racists, we're going to address this again since the inferior people are struggling. Black Americans are the only indigenous people on this land. Melanated people are the only people around the world who are indigenous on every land, no matter their ethnic group. Uncivilized lands all have the same genetic connection, melanated skin with varying shades of brown. And those groups are not connected to Africa, just like Black Americans aren't connected to Africans ethnically. The actual American Indian, known as the Black Americans, are the ethnic group of North America, not descendants of Africans. Let's dismantle the greatest public relations fraud ever committed, the desperate multiracial campaign to erase the true indigenous Black American from this land. There is a coordinated effort, a relentless lie, designed to make Black Americans believe they are a guest in someone else's house. But the unchangeable archaeological and historical truth is that Black Americans are the foundation. They were here first. And by here, I mean the world, every country, every strip of land. And they built the civilization that we are all destroying. The lie about Africa is to confuse and mislead so that the theft can keep going on. Black Americans weren't even considered African American until 1988 by Jesse Jackson, a known Cherokee Indian. So they'll pay a Black American leader to lie and sell out while classifying himself correctly despite the lie. If Black Americans came from Africa by boat in the 1600s, America didn't figure this out until 1988. And this isn't just a white lie. This is a lie woven by $5 pretendians, by secret treaties between immigrant groups, by decades of policy and propaganda, all aimed at one single goal: convincing the world that the original people of the soil simply do not exist. They have every story in the world about the false history. And then you ask for ship manifest and evidence of ships, and then suddenly they can't produce them. But they could show you evidence of the Titanic hundreds of feet under the ocean. They won't even show you the entirety of the Titanic under the water. Only a corner of this ship. They still parse that history. They have reclassified the true indigenous people, renamed you, and redrawn maps around you, hoping you would forget the land your spirit is made from. Now they deploy their little native influencers online, armed with fraudulent petitions and digital picket signs, begging platforms to remove you from your own story. They're performing a pathetic pantomime of indigeneity. If you are indigenous, why would you need outside help? What are they protecting? If you're truly indigenous Native Americans, how could someone take that from you? Why the sudden panic? Every post they make, every petition they circulate is an admission. You've been caught, and now history will be made. Every other race are the visitors. It is time, Black Americans. Time for you to start acting like the host in your home, because all of this is yours. It is time you start acting like the host.
If, in fact, Black people are not indigenous to this land, and I'm not talking about Africans who have came over here who were brought on slave ships. I'm talking about before that, the dark-skinned people of this land. Now, of course, people are going to say, oh, no, they look like, the Native Americans who we've learned about in our early history and foundation of America. But no, there were people here who were darker than that, okay? If Black people are not indigenous to this land, why are there HBCU colleges predominantly in the South? Tulsa, Oklahoma was the epicenter for Black Wall Street. Mind you, if you follow history, you know that all the Native and indigenous people were pushed into Oklahoma. And then they gave it an Indian reservation, Indian land. But Black people weren't indigenous? I've never seen a government of people work so hard to decimate one specific group of people. And we're talking about COINTELPRO. We're talking about crack being introduced into the hoods and the ghettos. We're talking about the gang wars in the 90s, okay? Y'all stay trying to create the new thing that will help us eliminate ourselves. Whether it be promiscuity, drugs, alcohol, again, gang violence. And then you have to wonder, that's why you pit the Mexicans and the blacks together during the 90s so bad. When I was growing up in Southern California, gang wars between East LA and Compton, that was bad. And I think that is by design, just like the motherfucking Bloods and Crips, by design. But we don't see the Native Americans out here, the ones who are upset that we're trying to lay any claim to being on this land and this land belonging to us as well. Y'all ain't trying to hear that. But at the same time, there's no historically Native American colleges. And then you have to wonder, the 5 civilized tribes who were recognized by the United Constitution, or whatever they were called at the time, were recognized. Why? Because basically you guys sold out your people to be deemed as civilized tribes, not the savages. So the white people at the time deemed your tribe, because the chief or person in charge at the time went along with the okie doke. So they said, okay, fine, y'all could be part of the fold. But don't sit up here and be like, black people can't be indigenous to this land, because the word black is a color, for one. It was a term that was described for people who were just of a darker skin color. And then you have to think about, too, when they were really trying to classify black and brown people into like where they would fall, and then it came to like the mixing with white, they had that whole drop of blood. If you had 1 drop of blood, you were considered black. Then there was the paper bag test to deem if if you could be accepted into white culture, or if even white culture would accept you regardless of your color. Like, if you acted a certain way, then they might accept you. But it was all based on, it was like a case by case basis. And so these people running around doing the census were just identifying people as they saw fit, or as the people who were running it saw fit. So the term native, the term indigenous, the term black, Negro, colored, all kind of got convoluted and mixed into one. So they couldn't really tell. They had to go based off of skin color, honestly. But I just find it funny that now all of a sudden people are getting mad because they're like, oh, black people are trying to claim that they're Native American, they're indigenous. And it's like, baby, you have to understand, you learned the same history that we did in public school. A lot of us did, okay? I do understand that, Native Americans have their tribes that they belong to, and they pass down history that way too. But also, a lot of history has been distorted, whitewashed, twisted, and to benefit the people who are running the show. But the more I see the spirit of black people, especially when we get together, Beach, it be strong as shit. It be strong. I just saw a video of this band, this HBCU band, and I'm playing, and it's like, that is like the spirit of people, of us people, when we get together, is just something that is just totally unmatched. Totally unmatched. And you have to live it to honestly understand it. But we've been here, and I'm gonna continue to say it.
Let's go over an old newspaper clipping from Harvard University and Peabody Museum and Research. But of course, before I go any further, TikTok, this is only for entertainment purposes only and educational purposes only. Do your own research and use your own discernment. Anything I say in this video is for entertainment purposes only. All right, so the key researcher speaking was Dr. Ronald B. Dixon, who was an American anthropologist. Now, it does say that he was born in 1875 and deceased by 1934. So I'm guessing this article came out in the early 1900s. Negro, Indians, ancestor. Harvard scientist says skull examination shows race devariations. Let's get into it. And once again, I highlighted the important details. Let's start. Cambridge, Mass. Negroes who crossed the Bering Strait in prehistoric times are among the ancestors of the American Indians, according to conclusions reached by Dr. Ronald B. Dixon of Peabody Museum, Harvard University. Negro people would appear to have been the first discoverers of America. Others, who crossed the Bering thousands of years ago to become the ancestors of the American Indian, were people of white stock. Now, pay attention to that phrase. I'm going to break it down to you after this. The Turkish tribes and other Mongolians and the Black Australians blended in various proportions formed the different races of the American Indians. Many tribes, in the opinion of the speaker, were largely Negroid in earlier times. Now let's go down to the other paragraph. He says the earliest skulls of the Iroquois and some other Indians show strong Negroid features. This Harvard University scientist clearly says that Black people, well, melanated people, were the first peoples in the Americas, the original foundational bloodline. Not European, not Asian, but the first wave, the original root. Pay attention. He says others who crossed the Bering Strait thousands of years ago to become the ancestors of the American Indians were people of white stock, Turkish tribes, other Mongolians, and the Black Australians blended in. Basically what he's saying, that there was a second wave of migration that also happened thousands of years ago that came in after the first wave, which was the people of white stock, the Turkish tribes, the Mongolians, the Black Australians, that intermixed with the Negroid population, which was the first wave, and formed a blend that we now know as the American Indians, or the indigenous tribes that were already here. All right, let's go deeper with what all this really means. As stated in the article, the first wave of migrations that got here to the Americas were Negroid. Now, the second wave that comes in thousands of years ago were also melanated. Why? Because pale skin mutations didn't even emerge up until 6,000 years ago in Eurasia, after these migrations happened. And remember, the original Europeans, the professor said people of white stock. That phrase didn't mean the modern day Europeans with pale skin. It just meant of European descent. The phrase people of white stock is an older colloquial term for people of European descent. All right, so we know that the original Europeans, also known as the hunter-gatherers, were melanated. Also, the original Mongolians, the original Asians, the original everything were melanated, and these are scientific facts. If the second wave came thousands of years before the pale skin mutations would have emerged, then everyone coming to the Americas would have been melanated by default. Meaning, as stated in the article, the first wave were Negroid, intermixed with the second wave, which were the original Caucasians, the original Mongolians, the original Australians, who were also melanated. And the modern day Native Americans would not have been part of that second wave because their phenotype, which is the pale skin, would not have been in the Americas before 6,000 years ago. And this is why there is no genetic or phenotypic continuity between the dark-skinned copper-colored Indians they describe all throughout the 1500 up into the 1800 records, between the pale-skinned Google images that are being shown that are the faces of the American Indian identity today. Those group of people are part of a colonial wave that was placed on top of us. You understand? So I follow this TikToker. Her name is Truth North Awakening. I did tag her in the video as well. She does a lot of research on Black Americans who does their ancestry, and she does a deep dive into their different admixtures. And while I was reading the article, I had an aha moment because she said something that stuck to me when she was going through her research. She finds out that a lot of us Black Americans carry the original Caucasus DNA, not the modern day European kind, but the original melanated one. And once again, the original Caucasians, who were the hunter-gatherers, were melanated. And that wave, along with others, intermixed with the Negroid wave. So now her research is starting to make even more sense to me because it's starting to come to a full circle moment because, as stated in her research, most Black Americans don't carry colonizer DNA, but we carry the ancient original Caucasus DNA. And so we carry the ancient bloodlines from both waves.
This actually means, it means that these Black Americans carry Caucasus DNA that predates modern Europeans, that predates colonial admixture. So it means that they were already in the Americas before populations began to split into what we know as modern Caucasians.
Respectfully, we got to stop saying that immigrants built America because they surely did not. And before y'all get in my comments talking about Black people are immigrants, y'all came from Africa. No, bitch. I can trace my ancestral history back from before pre-1619 to America. So my people have always been here. We are the true indigenous people of this land. So I don't know what y'all are talking about, but the majority of us Black Americans cannot trace our roots back to anywhere else but America. If we're going by America's timeline of when slavery was first documented and started, it was 1619. The majority of us can trace our history back to the deep south of America. So how do we come from Africa? This is no dig to Africa, but we got to stop that fucking bullshit ass narrative. Another thing, the enslaved people of America, the Black enslaved people of America during like what the first half of the 19th century, we were building the railroads, the schools, the everything, like all of the fucking infrastructure in this motherfucking, it was us. So how did immigrants build America? They may have come over here and helped contribute to what was already created and built and designed for everybody else, but not us, because we were never even designed for the system. They never even thought of us when they created the system. We were just the tools to help build it. That was it. We're literally the tools. So when y'all sit there and talk about immigrants built America, no. Stop being so fucking disrespectful to Black history, to Black American history. It's fucking irritating. It is. We built this motherfucking land. brick by brick, ho. Ho, is you cool? Happy Black History Month, bitch. Bye, TikTok.
Learning Black American history and Indigenous American history is actually the most patriotic thing you can do. In the same way that the story of immigrants and settlers is core to the story of what makes the United States of America the United States of America, I would argue that the story of Indigenous Americans and Black Americans is actually more central to that story. So if you really bout it, like, pick up a book, homie.
So I want to say thanks to everybody who's been supporting, getting the word out there, and you know, so like I said, it's a feel good moment. I had a few naysayers, and I even saw a naysayer say that this was a trend. Black Americans being indigenous, a trend that's gonna go away. I think they wish it would go away, but it's not. I don't see how finding unmarked graves and our indigenous ancestors is a trend. I don't see how finding out land got corporations on it is a trend. I don't see how finding out some of our enslaved ancestors were actually from tribes from North America or even the Caribbean was a trend. I'm not really sure how this works, but you know, they once again want to see the Indians just go away. Right? It's the only way you can make America work. The Indians go away. Black Wall Street that sat on Cherokee territory, I don't think that was a trend. But it was a very well-known documented attack, right? The Osage Nation, I'm pretty sure they can tell you a little something about it, being that they also had the same issue, being attacked for resources beneath their land. And we've seen Black Americans lose 90% of their land since the year 1900, right? The Negro question. It was always a very prominent question that even to this day in 2025, it still is unanswered. And they have been trying multiple times to get Black Americans to relocate off this land, i.e., the Liberian experiment. About in 1894, Senator John Taylor Morgan, who wanted to petition and did petition the Congress that Black Americans should be relocated to Hawaii, Cuba, maybe even the Philippines. And they were always trying to relocate Black Americans out of colonies. Today y'all call it gentrification, but I think we like to call it ethnic cleansing. It's exactly what it is. From Oliver Cromwell to now, private investors that come here to ethnic cleanse and price out people from areas they don't want there, those they deem undesirable. I think a lot of American Indians can relate to that, being that they were counting down to the last Indian in New England. And when they would continue to infringe on their land, breaking treaties that they weren't supposed to infringe on. It's an issue with paper genocide and the way how you can reclassify people to take on a identity that's not their own, with words of languages they might not quite understand. That within 100 years that they descendants will now have this language that they are following by. And little do they know, they will really usher themselves out of their own ownership in their own land. Why must you be reclassified so many times if you were just a slave? A slave is a slave. You don't need a name. But apparently you needed multiple. Why is that?
Sorry, y'all. So anyway, listen, y'all, this stuff is really growing over on TikTok. And, I really truly do believe in 2026, a lot of things are going to get amplified. I really do. And now that we are past the 400 years, you can best believe the revealing is going to go through the roof. And yeah, I mean, look, nobody has been reclassified more than us. No one. We have been reclassified multiple times and still getting reclassified even to this very day. So, look, y'all, it's going to be something that you're going to see throughout the year. And it's not just our people. A lot of the pretendians are bringing this up, but they're upset about it. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude, y'all. Thank you so much for being here. And, we'll be coming back again on different topics. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your day. I know some people will be watching the Super Bowl. I can't watch no Super Bowl. I got too many orders I have to fulfill, so I'm going to be working on that. So y'all enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you later. Shalom, family.